We're studying a serial killer, and I was connected to his brain. His name is Bryan Kohberger. Today I'm going to take you on a journey into the mind of a killer named Bryan Kohberger, who slaughtered 4 innocent college students in Moscow, Idaho. As it stands now, Bryan Kohberger has pled guilty, and he will be sentenced this coming week up there in Idaho. It will be an interesting day, and equally interesting will be the information that comes out in the following days, weeks, and months. I'm Reverend Donna Seraphina, and I uploaded a reading on November 22nd, 2022, that takes you into the mind of the killer, that shows you what he was thinking and why he was doing what he was doing. Subsequent readings have expanded on that, and I'd like to share and go into this with you today as I see so much confusion out on the internet as to what Bryan's motive was. In the first reading, and actually this is good to know about any readings, I could be in different levels of trance or different levels of openness to the psychic world during one given reading, and I could go deeper and deeper into trance. There comes a point when I'm so deep into trance that it looks like I'm watching everything in 3D. It feels like I'm there. The only difference is things are a little bit, the opacity of them would be lower. You don't really see through them, but they're not as firm as in the physical world. And it's in those times I really believe things happen a certain way when I'm in that deep and I see them, which I'm aware that Bill Thompson and others are going to claim that the order of death, and I'm waiting to see their evidence on that and potentially debunk it, because I can't understand how it would be any different than Bryan going in and going to the room on the left first. That's another issue though. Another issue that's come up is everyone running around saying Maddie's the target, Maddie's the target. And really, I put up that magazine article where it talks about me saying Maddie is the target right after the murders happen. Because even then, you have to understand what was going on in his head to understand that the target was the girls he could not have. The target isn't, he doesn't just love Maddie, even if that is true. And I can say, sure, if he liked all Maddie's pictures on social media, maybe he had a crush on her. But then Kaylee would have been part of his fantasy as well as being the person blocking, right? Because she looks like this woman, this girl who bullied him all through school. Mercilessly, he was bullied by a lady that looked very much like Kaylee Goncalves. I don't want to lead you down the path without really taking you through the path. So this video is going to be very graphic in nature. It deals with a serial killer, which is Bryan Kohberger. It deals with what he was really thinking, what his fantasies are and were, and what turns him on. Now, when you look at that first reading, if you go back and listen to it, I think it's about 38 minutes that ended up being uploaded. During the time I listened to it, my dog was literally in the middle of having puppies, and I knew I didn't have time to fully edit it, but I wanted to get the information public so that if any law enforcement who had an open mind were listening, they would get at least the identity of the killer. This is a serial killer. Here's what he looks like, etc., etc. So I put it up. But there was a point when I listened through it where it got grosser and grosser. And I think even some of the information that did get on there was gross, but there had to be enough for the police to, or whoever, to really understand this is a serial killer. Okay, this is someone who likes the thrill of the kill, he likes blood, etc., etc. So there's some of that on there, but it got worse. The actual reading is 1 hour and 8 minutes long. So there are some silences that I'll cut out, but yeah, it gets pretty gross. And then I did more readings connected to his brain more. And so I think that I'm in a unique position to share that with you so that you can fully understand the mind of a serial killer. So we're going to go through that now. We're going to go through some clips that show you the real Bryan Kohberger. Reverend Donna Seraphina, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm a spiritualist reverend and a psychic medium. If you can make sure you're subscribed to my channel, give it a thumbs up, even leave one word comment, that will put the video out on the algorithm. So thank you so much. Let's get started with the first clip. In the months following the murders, I put out a video about motive. And that video still stands today. There's been nothing to disprove it. However, we're going to go through those clips and some more clips, and I'm going to tell you just how sick and demented Bryan Kohberger really is. Around the 21st of December, I did a reading, and in that reading, he again was this red-haired guy. The red-haired guy I saw behind the pole, or the tree, right? Who is that guy? Is that a separate guy, or is that Bryan having a multiple personality, or is that to represent Bryan when he's younger? I don't have the definitive answer on that yet, and I'm waiting till everything comes out and becomes public in the coming months to be able to validate and verify and confirm my reading. Also, as a psychic medium who's always wanting to grow, then I want to also see what I might have not interpreted correctly, and so how I might do better in the future. So around the 21st of December, there was a reading I did. I talked about this on the live streams. I saw him dip his finger into what would be about probably a baby food jar, but about that size. And he just dipped his finger in there and then just put a little blood on his private area and began masturbating. And underneath that, it says autoerotica. It says autoerotica. I'm going to read it. In the first reading, actually, what I'm saying is he likes blood. He is not eating it. He's just putting it on. And that's what I'm talking about. Later it gets expanded. You know how the readings get more and more detailed? But there is other things, because even in that first reading, he's like licking the knife. He's just super gross. We're going to go through it. It really, if you want to understand Bryan Kohberger and the real sickness of a serial killer, they're turned on by something different than a normal person, for sure. So let me look at this. Let me look for this. I'm going to go into a whole different reading. I think it's around the 21st. It's a jar of blood. Okay, so this says, I've seen the guy that looks like Murdoch's son, and he likes blood, so he brought like a little jar, a little container, and he likes to sit in his room and put it on his privates and stuff. This kid is twisted. His mom knows something's wrong with him, and she doesn't know exactly the extent or what, but she knows something's wrong with him. And then it was actually, so this one was 12/11, and then it was a couple weeks after that. It was on the 26th, I did another reading where I said he is literally about to kill his mother. Like, he wants to kill her. He's in killing mode. He's got that energy of wanting to kill. And if she even brings up the possibility that he might be the killer, he's going to put a meat cleaver in her head. Like, literally, we're a hair trigger away from this man killing his mother. And if that happened, he could have ended up killing whoever was in the home as well. And fortunately, the law enforcement arrested Bryan the next day. Because on the 28th, I put up a stringent warning that this was about to happen. This is in play. He is going to murder his mother if she says anything. And the next day, on the 29th, in the middle of the night, which would really technically be the 30th, but it was about 24 hours later, they arrested Bryan after I put that up. So that's kind of interesting right there. Okay, so there's more though. This guy's so sick. I want to use the exact word. Oh, if anybody has a clue about this 3-layer strawberry cake with strawberry chips, please contact me. Okay, and then there's on the 21st. So there's multiple times when I'm talking about this autoerotica of Bryan's. He is sexually aroused by blood. And the more that I have read the transcripts from my later readings, which I'm not even through with, I have a bunch, and I didn't realize I had them, but the more that I read them, this is what he does. So it's hard to believe that he hasn't done this before. And maybe he didn't do it before with humans. Maybe he did. Maybe he got the blood somewhere else or with animals. But I just don't see a world where he hasn't killed some animals, got their blood, and done this, because he's really into it. On the 23rd, I'm seeing a brunette with curly hair. I say, I'm jumping ahead of myself now. I want them to show me the stabbing. I'm seeing one of the curly head brunettes. He got hair on him and is in the car. Oh, that goes to Maddie. See, it doesn't matter to me. I'm sure they never found a hair with Maddie on the car. We probably would have heard about it, but there was one in there. At that time, I'm sure there was. They wouldn't have shown me. I hear the name Bryan associated with the brunette. That was on 12/23. Here's a clue I haven't been able to figure out, and that's I see a pillar. It is like the right pillar is there, but the left pillar is missing. If anyone wants to write me an email about that, would be great. More clues about where the knife is. Then let's see. But today, see, there's a lot of issues, and I'm going to put out like a psychic overview of everything after we get more information. But right now, what I want to show you is about what he did. So when he's reliving what he did, when Bryan relives what he did, he likes to eat blood. He did cut his finger, like I showed you before. I've showed you this before. He cut his finger right here. On the 26th, I'm seeing a person walking up the side of the house. Seems like he's wearing a knit cap. All these other guys wear baseball hats, and he has a knit cap that goes down into a mask. So I wish I had uploaded that, but there's plenty of uploaded ones before things came out for people who are skeptics, and then the rest of you can just enjoy. This is an important one if anyone's ever looking for the knife. If you have underground sonar, you have to watch his shape, because at one I'm saying porous concrete, or he's carrying a bag of concrete. Did he make a little box with concrete to bury some of this? It's really important to him, these things. First one, there's this whole scene where this man, and okay, so in the first video, it's really clear that I mixed the girls up. And the reason for that is that I like to do one reading where I don't know a lot about the case, just to kind of keep my mind clear of influences. So, but there are times when it is very clear who I'm talking about. And when I'm talking about Bryan, who we now know as Bryan, and I'm describing this man, and I say he's following the girl with the slightly rounder face, the shorter one, slightly chubbier. Okay, so compared to Maddie, she has a rounder face and she's just slightly chubbier. She's not chubby, it's just, you know, next to Maddie, she's a little chubbier. So it's Kaylee that's being followed. On one of the following readings that I didn't upload because the sound quality was so bad, there's a full 6 minutes about that downtown interaction. There's probably 2 minutes in the first reading. It is expanded on in the second reading. I 100% believe this is Kaylee. Now, when you get to the Xana Kernodle reading that I did on January 3rd, the people that wanted that reading were friends with Xana and Maddie. They didn't really know Kaylee. They'd only met her a couple times. And yet Kaylee came in. This video is going to be graphic. There is no way to go into what Bryan Kohberger was thinking without being graphic. If the graphic nature of what Bryan Kohberger was thinking while he was doing this and why he was motivated to do it might offend you, please turn this video off now and go look in my playlist for a different video. The only way to address the real Bryan Kohberger is to talk about something called autoerotica. 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 He is sexually turned on by the sight of blood, and specifically he's sexually turned on by putting blood on himself and masturbating. Now, if that really offends you, it's going to get 100 times worse. So I'm just saying that bluntly. If this is going to be too much for you, now's the time to turn this video off, because we're studying a serial killer. We're studying a serial killer, and I was connected to his brain. His name is Bryan Kohberger. If he had not been caught, he would have killed a lot more. If he had not been caught, he may have very well killed his mother and his family. He wanted to kill his coworker. But there's so much more to his deep, hidden motives, desires, and fantasies that you really cannot understand the mind of this killer unless you go down that road. And I'm going to take you down that road based on my readings, based on readings that were never uploaded, and based on the parts that I cut out of the first reading. The first reading has 38 minutes uploaded. On that night, when I uploaded that, my dog was in the middle of having puppies. I only had about an hour. I went to edit it and it got grosser and grosser and grosser. So I just left enough where if law enforcement was listening, they would know this is a serial killer, because you have to profile the serial killer and kind of have an idea of what they're thinking, and then you know it's one. And also that would have his description and that he tried to approach this girl, Kaylee. There's more to it than the simplicity of the physical world. There just really is. There's really more to this crime and all these heinous crimes than the simplicity of the material world. One example of that is many of these missing children who are abducted by strangers go missing near satanic holidays that are human sacrifice days. And I'm wondering why you are not told that as a general public. But besides that, what we have, the more that I study the readings I did not upload, which as you've seen before on other cases, the more readings, right, the subsequent readings always expand and give more and more detail. The more I read, the harder it is for me to believe that Bryan did not do this before. And if he did not do it with a human, I fully believe he has killed animals for their blood and done the same sort of self-arousal as he was doing with the 4 Idaho college students. So I'm going to bring you down that road again. This is the only way to do this is if it's graphic. And this is to actually understand a serial killer. And one thing that, you know, several years ago when I started putting videos here on YouTube, what I wanted to show, because I feel like media, was it the mainstream media or YouTubers, mainstream media even more, sexualizes everything. They sensationalize everything. And I know that from personal experience from having family members murdered, that what the media will do is they want to jerk the chair out from under the family victims so they can get a quick response without thinking. They also, back in the days of newspaper articles, will take a whole bunch of sentences that in themselves were true, but they'll rearrange them to make a more sensational story. Another thing that mainstream media does is they want to fit together some pieces, they want to create a narrative, and they want to spin that narrative. And even if the different media companies were not working together and conspiring on that, they do it just by their nature. Because if they have a story that works that they can sell, then it makes it so much easier for them to control the narrative. And the angle that independent journalists, independent social media creators bring is they do their own research. They form their own opinions, and they bring stories that you're never going to get in mainstream media. So I hope you enjoyed the video today. I absolutely 100% need you to share my video. I totally need you to share my video. I've clipped out sections of the November 22nd upload, along with clips from other readings that give you a clear understanding of the brain of Bryan Kohberger and how it works. I have to give you a warning now that this video is very graphic. There's no way to go into the brain of Bryan Kohberger without being graphic. If the graphic nature of these horrible crimes would be something that upsets you, now is the time to turn this video off and look for a different video. It is only if you fully understand the information that I am presenting that you can deeply understand that Bryan Kohberger's target was the girls he could not have. All of them. The girls he could not have. And you could dismiss that and go, yep, well, he liked Maddie's social media. So what? You're going to understand it when I go through it. But let me just tell you blankly, they're all part of the fantasy. Bryan has a fantasy world going on inside his brain that involves a lot of grotesque actions as well as blood, a lot of blood. He is sexually aroused by blood. So we're going to go into that. And again, this is going to be graphic. We're going to look in the mind of a killer. I think it's a valid thing to do to dissect what Bryan Kohberger was thinking and feeling and doing and what led up to the murders and how they happened. And everything that you have heard everywhere else is speculation. What you're going to hear from me is where I was actually energetically out of my body and I was connected to the brain of the killer while he did the killings. I alone know what he was thinking. So here we go. It is gross. It is graphic. And this is Bryan Kohberger. As you know, my readings tend to get more and more detailed as I go along on a case. Some of these have not been uploaded to YouTube. In a subsequent reading, I am talking again, in multiple readings, I'm talking about this little jar of blood he has and how he likes to apply a little to his private part before he self-gratifies himself, right? That's what turns him on. It literally is a sexual arousal. And it's called, what I said in my reading, it's called autoerotica. And that is a word, it got me a double look when I read the transcript, because that's not a word I've ever used in my life. He uses blood to sexually stimulate himself while he's masturbating. Okay, so we're going to get into everything about the secrets of Bryan Kohberger. And again, it is graphic, but it's real, and it's a study in a serial killer that I don't think you can get anywhere else. The more that I've gone over transcripts from some of my subsequent readings to the first one, the harder it gets for me to even believe that Bryan has not done this before. But it's especially hard that he at least hasn't done this to animals and gotten their blood and put it in a jar and done the same thing while fantasizing about humans. That's if he hadn't already done it before with a human. So we know if he was breaking into people's houses, and maybe when I see the redhead behind the tree or behind the phone pole outside of the King Street house, and he looks like Paul Murdaugh. I always wondered, is this Jack Showalter walking home, or does Bryan have a multiple personality disorder? That doesn't mean he's not responsible. That just means that he clicks into, the evil Bryan from the old scared Bryan who only used to be a voyeur. I'm not sure. But I do know it's also, at least in one of the readings, the one that looks like Paul Murdaugh that's actually doing the autoerotica with the blood. Yeah, very interesting. One thing I would like to clear up is Bryan's level of fear. So Howard Blum thought that Bryan was probably driving around the block because he was afraid or apprehensive, or, he's making sure that he had some second thoughts. That's not the case. I want to be clear. Bryan Kohberger had no fear the night that he was going to kill those innocent college students. He didn't go around the block because he was afraid. Bryan Kohberger had no fear. When he went and parked his car, he was 100% committed to what he was doing. He felt no fear whatsoever. He walked, if he parked up in that upper spot, he still walked up the street, walked by the front door, and then around or up to the back of the house, up to the right, Bryan Kohberger had no fear whatsoever when he entered that house and prior to the killings. The two girls who are still alive are not alive because he was tired, which is what I've heard from experts, that he was tired or sympathetic, whatever. No, he had no regret, no fear, no remorse. He was not tired, and he wanted to go kill the other ones. He had put himself on a time thing. He was probably trying to beat Ted Bundy's time. The point being that Bryan Kohberger had no fear whatsoever when he went in that house. He did not feel fear. And when he left, he did not feel remorse. Bryan Kohberger was driving down the highway that night celebrating. Literally going, yee-haw, yee-hoo, woohoo. He was happy. And just like you see in the thumbs up selfie that he took, mimicking one of his heroes, Ted Bundy, he was happy about what he had done. If Bryan ever felt remorse, it's remorse about being caught. It's not remorse about what he's done. In fact, it is for sure that if he had gotten away with it, he would have done more, for sure. With all the speculation out there, I see that people are on the outside looking in, essentially, as to what and why Bryan may have done this. And I really, truly don't think you could understand the target issue that has been so propagated unless you understand the psyche, the real psyche of Bryan Kohberger, the killer. My name is Reverend Donna Seraphina. I'm a spiritualist reverend and a psychic medium. I did several readings the week after and up until after Bryan's arrest in this case, which are in a playlist under my playlist tabs. You can listen to those readings again and now see what they include that might help you confirm, one, that psychics are real, one, that the afterlives are real. But the other thing is just that this kind of work can be very valuable in cases where law enforcement has no leads and no clues. In the reading that I did on November 18th, 2022, and then uploaded on November 22nd, 2022, I go into the mind of the killer. My spirit guides first take me into the downtown area, and they show me a young woman, which is very clearly Kaylee Goncalves, being stalked, or at least being approached by a man who is attracted to her, and he's trying to get her attention. She's not interested in this guy. But how I described this guy was about 6 feet tall, about 30 years old. He's trying to talk to her about university stuff, but because he's older, she doesn't know if she believes him that he goes to the university, that he has brunette hair, that it's wavy on top, and that he's wearing a black hoodie. Later, when he's in the house killing them, I describe him as part Caucasian and part either Mediterranean. So his mother is actually, her maiden name is Italian, so that's where that comes in, that nose that I saw. And the bushy eyebrows, right? Because I said he has, in coloring wise, see, don't leave out the before and after. When I tell you something in a reading, it matters. In every playlist, I have videos on how to interpret readings. Anytime I tell you something, that could represent a person or a place or a thing. For instance, in the case of another missing young woman named Kaylee Rodney, I said they're showing me a bear crossing the road. Well, several teenagers actually emailed me and said that bear up there in Truckee, where they live near Lake Tahoe, if you write bear on your messages, that means bring everything alcohol related, like it's a party, right? Okay, so what I saw was an actual bear crossing the street. What it was an alcohol related party, right? So I don't want to go all into that, because if you listen to my readings, you know that very well. And if you're interested, there are videos that help you interpret that. But essentially, if they showed me a peach, it could be something the name of peach, or it could be a nightgown that's peach color. Like, we don't know. And what a lot of people help me with is looking up and doing sleuthing. So there are actually some clues that I would like help with. But first, we're going to get into the blood gore of Bryan Kohberger. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my channel. My name is Reverend Donna Seraphina. I am a psychic medium and a spiritualist reverend. This segment is about the motivation of Bryan Kohberger. It is number 2 in a series, Catching Up with Kohberger. Motivation defined is a reason for doing something, and especially if it's hidden or not obvious. Most of you know the story of the 4 students in Idaho who were brutally murdered in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022. For 6 weeks, panic gripped the nation, who watched on edge as law enforcement rallied all resources to track the unknown killer. Theories circulating included spurned boyfriends, angry frat boys, and drug cartels, among other things. The names of the victims are as follows: Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. 2 other roommates survived the massacre, but they are victims of the trauma that night as well. Their names are Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk. On November 18th, 2022, I did a meditation reading asking for information that could possibly be useful for law enforcement to track down such an obviously dangerous killer of innocent people. When I woke up from the reading, I had almost no memory of what I had been shown. I had experienced a full out-of-body trip and had connected with the mind of the killer, trailing him to what felt like several feet behind him as he moved quickly through the house and committed his crimes. The reading I am referring to in this video was uploaded 11/22/22. In the title, it says Possible Suspect Description, and the thumbnail says, I see the killer. In the first video of this series, Catching Up with Kohberger, I covered the description of the suspect I gave in the November 2022 reading. In comparison with Bryan Kohberger, who has been arrested and is now awaiting trial for his crime, Bryan Kohberger is a perfect match to who I described in the reading uploaded 11/22/22. And you can find that in the playlist for the Idaho students. The description I gave of Bryan Kohberger was around age 30, 6 feet tall, brunette with curly hair on top, Caucasian with a bit of Mediterranean mixed in, and it turns out his mother's maiden name is Italian. You can find the first in this series on my playlist for the Idaho students. However, if you're new to this series, you can watch this and then that one afterwards. In this segment, I'm going to look at motive. Simply put, motive means reason for doing something. Life is rarely that simple. Our actions are usually an interplay of multiple factors acting on each other. The result can be good or bad, positive or negative. Those are decisions that each one of us has to make. The following recordings are of a graphic nature intended to seek information from the angelic realm in order to get a killer off the streets and prevent more murders. If graphic information disturbs you, please stop this video now and go find a different video in my video page. We want to look at the many facets of what motivated Bryan Kohberger if he is indeed found guilty, and I think we should start with what was known publicly prior to my reading being uploaded.
As we continue our investigation, we have learned that Ethan and Xana were at a party on campus, and Madison and Kaylee were at a downtown bar. They arrived home sometime after 1:45. The four were stabbed with a knife, but no weapon has been located at this time. There was no sign of forced entry into the residence. Based on details at the scene, we believe this was an isolated, targeted attack on our victims. We do not have a suspect at this time, and that individual is still out there. We cannot say that there is no threat to the community, and as we have stated, please stay vigilant, report any suspicious activity, and be aware of your surroundings at all times. Or what we don't know, the identity and location of the suspect. We are asking citizens to contact us with any information you may have that will help in this investigation.
Law enforcement could not release details of their investigation at press conferences. In the 7 weeks between the crimes at King Street and the arrest of Bryan Kohberger, speculation went viral, and here are some quick clips of what the main speculation was. Hoodie guy became an instant suspect and was ruled out due to the fact that his alibi was that in the 3-4 in the morning he went to his parents' hunting cabin. Kaylee's ex became an instant suspect because she had broken up with him and was going to move to another state. Drug cartels became an instant suspect as rumors leaked out about potential parties and drug use at that house. And then, of course, any neighbor willing to come out and speak publicly became a suspect, such as Jeremy or Enon. According to my reading, hatred was the number one motivation of Bryan Kohberger, as well as the anger that came along and was fueled by that hatred. So he feels the energy of the guy who does this feels like, obviously he has a lot of hatred, and that's obvious, but I'm feeling his hatred right now. His hatred in general of just feeling like, kind of like there's all this fresh candy around town, but he can't have any. And I have chills on my legs about that. Rejecting him. He might be a little older than I thought then. Let's see. He's definitely not college age. He hates these little bitches running around, like kind of flaunting themselves, but then not giving him what he wants. You know, like he doesn't get any kind of feeling. I mean, and that's his thinking, not mine. That's what he's, in his mind, he's, the little bitches thing is not from me, it's from his mind. I gotta show him, like, confirming that. Bryan hated what he could not have. It filled him with rage. Now, you say that's obvious now, but at the time, nobody knew anything. They were blaming everybody that came out of their apartment. Remember that. It made Bryan angry that Kaylee, Maddie, and Xana he felt they were flaunting themselves and that they were like candy and he could not have it and he wanted to kill them. He was mad because he, quote, could not have any. In fact, during the reading, when I was connected to the brain of Bryan Kohberger, I received his direct thought, quote, he hates all these little bitches flaunting themselves and he could not have any. So in two different words, he denigrates them and objectifies them, does not see them with any empathy or compassion or humanness. Bryan was angry that he could not have them. He wanted revenge on them for making him feel this way, and more important, revenge against all women he could not have. He likes the thrill of the killing. He actually likes the taste of blood. The pretty girls, the bubbly girls, the happy girls that he felt rejected by. For Bryan, it was more than anger, it was hatred. I directly received his feelings. He hates these little bitches. And although I did not want to repeat it, this information was necessary for anybody listening or looking to understand when they're talking about drug cartels, neighbors, and ex-boyfriends. That this guy had serial killer thoughts, serial killer energy. He likes the thrill of the kill, and he actually likes the taste of blood. This was a killer whose only relationship with his victims was that of his own fantasies. It would not be a boyfriend or a drug deal gone wrong. I was shown that the person who did this is the same one I had earlier described. I can't rule, I can tell them apart a little bit. I think it's the one that has a little rounder face. And she's doing something. So I'm just going to follow her a minute and I'll tell you. They're just showing me her. But we're walking somewhere. We're in the main street area of that little town. I'm seeing a guy talking to her, and he's quite a bit taller. I mean, she sits on a bench, or it really feels like if there's a tree, and I'm getting chills on my legs, if there's a tree that has a bench surrounding the tree, like, you know how they put those half-round benches around trees sometimes? He's taller, and because this guy seems like he has like if he was like 6 feet tall or something like that, you know, a bigger build. And she's not really interested in him because so it's not that, it doesn't feel like she knows him. It doesn't feel like she's super interested in talking to him. She's definitely not interested in going out with him. Oh, he has brown hair. In fact, he looks different than the one that got killed, but he's larger size like that. And his hair is a little bit, it might have a wave in it, and it's thick, and he might be a little older. Okay, I have chills about that. He's a little older. So she doesn't totally believe, she's like wondering if he really even goes to college or not or something. He's wearing a black sweatshirt or hoodie or black. Now I'm seeing the front of the house again. It's like 11. So at the point in the reading where I'm connected to his brain, where he's in the house committing these crimes, I'm also shown that this was the man who had approached who I called the round-faced girl in Main Street, who I described, and it fits perfectly with Bryan Kohberger. And he had followed one of the girls up the downtown area, so I knew he was a stalker from that point forward, regardless of the public information. So right there was the information for me that this killer was a stranger to these girls, that he was older, around age 30, brunette, curly hair, around 6 feet tall. And he had spotted one of the girls, tried to follow her up the street, so she stopped on the bench, and he continued to try to talk to her. That she wasn't afraid, but she just was not interested. So he had spotted, started following, and talking to one of the girls, and the implication was clear, that this attention was from an unwanted male, and hence a stalker. And I put the stalker together with other information in the reading when he was in the house, saying, I feel like I have been here before. If you put me in the mind of the killer, and then I get some spirit energy, and then I'm like, did you leave town? Did you leave town? Okay, so now I'm going up the side of the house on the right. So if I was standing there in the lower part facing the house and I have strong chills on my legs, I go up the right, I go up the hill, and I go in the back way like that, and I got big chills on my legs. I'm just going to go with what I feel like and maybe check with the facts after, because I feel like I'm with the killer and I'm going up the side of the house on the right and in the back sliding door. And so he has this moment where he knows he's in, and he's taking his time. He seems to know when he goes. He knows, I feel like he's been there before, etc. So I was shown that when I was connected to the mind of the killer, I felt familiar with the interior of the house, leading me to wonder if he had been here before. In the reading, I say, I feel as if I have been in here before because I'm connected to his brain. So that indicated stalking that had progressed into potentially this man even entering that residence on a prior date. As I was connected to the mind of the killer, I received his grotesque fantasies of what he wanted to do. So he had more than just the simple rage and hatred. He also had really twisted, grotesque fantasies. And of one of the girls in particular, which is most likely Kaylee Goncalves. My first reading on any case, I like to go in it without knowing too much. So I like to do at least one reading where I don't know. So I looked at a photo of these kids who got killed. Then I went in my room and laid down. I wasn't sure about their names and they looked similar, so I didn't know who was who the whole time. But what I did here on November 22nd, I uploaded. I did not know which woman was which of the two upstairs. At the time when the killer had not been caught, in order to have a complete psychological profile, this was definitely feeling like a serial killer, not a boyfriend, not a drug hit, not a fight from the frat house.
He likes the thrill of the kill and he actually likes the taste of blood.
There was no doubt in my mind that this person would kill again if he was not caught. If he wasn't a serial killer already and he got away with this, he would kill more, for sure. To summarize, he had horribly grotesque thoughts that ended with the killer wanting Kaylee to be the last person she ever saw as she was dying, and he was inflicting severe bodily damage. It's pure hatred. It's pure evil hatred.
I think he has fantasies of the one that's not the thinner one, but the one with the rounder face a little bit. He has fantasies about her. Like, the fantasies are of a real grotesque nature. But it's him, and that's going to be the last thing she sees while she's alive. Like, that's the feeling he has in his head. I got chills on my legs.
Murder is not kind, it is not sexy, it is not pretty. Kaylee was a real person with a real family. Kaylee had hopes, dreams, and her entire life in front of her. And on November 13, 2022, all that was taken away from her. The same is true for Maddie, Xana, and Ethan. It also may be a contributing factor, yet it was not in my reading, but I believe it was the Daily Mail or the Sun did an article and found out that Kaylee looked very similar to a girl who had bullied Bryan in elementary school and probably beyond when he was an overweight, kind of nerdy misfit, and the mean girls would bully him. And one of them has quite a likeness with Kaylee. Although that wasn't shown to me in my reading, it does make sense. So if the popular girl was bullying him and harassing him and embarrassing him, but at his prepubescent stage, if his fantasies included both being aroused by this girl and rage intertwined and wanting revenge on this girl and reinforcing that as he goes through puberty, that could play into what occurred on King Road so many years later. One of the important things about the development of serial killers is the reinforcement and intertwining of hatred with physical desire, usually quite frequently at a young age or through puberty. And the arousal by the one who also torments and taunts and humiliates and wanting that revenge twisted all together in their minds, and the rage, revenge, intertwined and carefully nurtured throughout puberty and Bryan's teenage years. And that makes total sense as a contributing factor, at least in his choice of target. The killer was filled with rage and hatred towards the girls he could not have, perceiving them to be flaunting themselves like candy, and he wasn't allowed to have it, and he hated them knowing that he never would have it, that he couldn't have it, and even having approached one of them and being rejected. So no chance that he could have one of these females. He wanted to kill him. It was a type. If you really want to talk about a target, it's actually a type. Bryan's thoughts were of a derogatory nature as he objectified the young women as candy he could not have. In the reading, although much of his rage seems to be directed at Kaylee, I was also picking up outside the house. I'm waiting for Maddie. I'm waiting for Maddie.
A similarity in looks. I would say a similarity, not identical. I'm in front of the house again, just looking at the house. I feel like I'm waiting for Madison. I feel like, I don't know which one she is, but I just feel like saying I'm waiting for Madison.
Bryan may have had fantasies of unrequited love for her, but also severe anger and rage at Kaylee, because if you think about it, Bryan had an entire fantasy world and life related to these people going on in his head, which involved ultimately harming them and killing them. So the target that so many people discuss is actually a type of female, and that this is the type he could not have, that would reject him, that brought about his desire for revenge through no fault of their own. At some point in his life, Bryan developed a fascination with serial killers. I've done a couple more readings as not yet uploaded, but what I was shown in one of them was how Bryan considered all serial killers to be celebrities in his mind. When Bryan studied serial killers, he was fantasizing, living vicariously through them, looking through their eyes, experiencing what they experienced, and getting turned on by it. So a normal person would study this serial killer and look at all kinds of issues such as victimization, etc. But Bryan was enjoying the thrill of pretending he was living through the serial killer as to what it would be like to carry out that action. I was shown that if Bryan was able to meet one of these serial killers in person, for him, it would be like meeting an idol or a celebrity, and that included all the serial killers. So if you look at his Instagram, it said something along the lines, it was a famous quote, and it says, you know, true mastery is to feel like doing something and not doing it. I think at that time he was referring to his desire to kill. So it wasn't just one serial killer in particular that he idolized. He may have been attempting to beat Ted Bundy's record in 1978 at the Florida sorority house slayings, where detectives would later say they believed Ted Bundy to be in that sorority house for under 15 minutes.
And he has no remorse or anything like that. No remorse. He thinks for a second of looking for more, but he stops for a second and there's no noise. There's nobody getting up. So he just waits for a few minutes. And he's like really on a high now. He's sticky with the blood, but for him it feels good.
And we know that Bryan, by the estimates of the way that law enforcement has tracked him, they are believing that these killings took place in around 9 or 10 minutes. Another killer Bryan may have referenced and identified with is Elliot Rogers, who also felt angry about all the girls he could not have. In 2014, Elliot attempted to gain entry to a sorority house in Santa Barbara for the purpose of committing murder. Elliot was unable to gain entry, so Elliot then went on a rampage, killing 6 people and injuring 14 more. Elliot had also left a lengthy manifesto outlining his anger and rage for a perceived lifetime of rejection by the young women that he could not have. The reason I mention Elliot Rogers is that an account on Facebook was made under the name of Papa Rogers, and this Papa Rogers arrogantly taunted group members. We believe this account to be associated with Bryan Kohberger, that of Papa Rogers, where he taunted the group members on Facebook, and that he was most likely giving a nod to killer Elliot Rogers, with whom he identified as an incel, which is somebody who's involuntarily celibate. However, there's millions of people like that who don't have this anger and don't want to kill anybody. So the Papa Rogers profile with the toying of his audience, believed to be Bryan Kohberger, he displayed the narcissism that would ultimately get him caught. And I say that he would even do this to begin with. He thought that he would outsmart the law. It would not be long after Bryan Kohberger was arrested that cyber sleuths everywhere would locate a questionnaire on Reddit where Bryan conducted a study as part of his education relating on how to commit a crime and get away with it, thinly disguised as a way to study criminal psychology. Bryan believed that he had acquired the knowledge and skills to outwit what was certain to bring in the FBI in a death penalty state such as Idaho. In his arrogance, he believed he could enter a house in less than 15 minutes, murder everybody in there, and not get caught. As we know, he left 2 witnesses, Dylan Mortensen and Bethany Funk. In the 11/22 uploaded reading, I was shown that Bryan wanted to kill the other 2 girls.
He thinks for a second of looking for more, but he stops for a second and there's no noise. There's nobody getting up. So he just waits for a few minutes. And he's like really on a high now. He's sticky with the blood, but for him it feels good.
Bottom line, Bryan used up his allotted time. He had given himself a specific amount of time to carry out these crimes. And Bryan decided that he must leave right then. He actually wanted to go murder those girls, but he had used up his time. I was shown that this was to do with what felt like OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. This time constraint that I was shown and uploaded on 11/22 was bolstered by an interview somebody did with Bryan's downstairs neighbor that said that Bryan used to get up in the middle of the night and start running all over the place or just making all kinds of noise. And I completely believe that what Bryan was doing in his OCD was training his body to be able to be up at 3 a.m. and running all over and making practices, moving with his knife and that kind of thing. I believe Bryan Kohberger was training to make his body work at ultimate performance at that particular hour of the night. Bryan Kohberger was a runner, a jogger, and he liked to jog at night. He was capable. Bryan could run a mile in 8 minutes. So I calculated, what's the distance through the house? Well, okay, a mile is approximately 5,000 feet. If he ran into the house to the left, then he ran up the stairs, did that, then he came back down, went back into Xana's room, then he went out on the back patio, then he came back in and went down the stairs, that would be approximately 200 feet in his 9 minutes in the house. And so Bryan was capable of running across the living room in 3 seconds. Combined running Bryan had to do to carry out these deaths only accounts for a maximum of 30 seconds of the alleged 9 minutes he was in the house, and you could even give him 2 and then 7 minutes left for what he did to some people that were essentially, if not totally, asleep in the last minutes of being awake. So, and essentially is what I'm saying, they didn't have their guard up. Bryan had approximately 8 minutes to carry out each 4 killings. That's 2 minutes each. Again, buy some steak at the store and see how long you don't understand how easy that is. But anyways, his decision had already been made, and when I was connected to his brain, literally he had thought, acknowledging he was inside. So that I'm talking about in the reading when I'm connected to his brain. That other than that, it was pure animal carrying out his plan. I mean, he had a couple other thoughts, but it was he had already decided ahead of time he was going to do this. There was no conversation, nothing, just going into these rooms, wreaking havoc with pure animal rage. So twice I saw him briefly stop, The first time was after he harmed Xana and Ethan, and he stopped at the doorway to listen to see if he thought anyone heard him. And then the second was when he stopped upstairs after going in Xana and Ethan's room. He stopped upstairs. When he did what he did up there, he stopped, gave himself a minute. He was glorified. He was happy. Had no remorse whatsoever. He felt extremely pleased with himself after these deaths upstairs. And Bryan had more than enough time to carry out these killings, which he had been planning for months. Bryan was on a high, on a rush, extremely satisfied with himself, no regret, no guilt, no remorse.
It feels like the one named Madison. If the one named Madison is the one that has the little rounder face, it feels like she was the target. Is that correct? No, I have a real sick feeling. Sometimes they give me a really sickening feeling when I see it too, so I'm not 100% sure.
What some people do not realize is that Bryan had planned this for months. He was fully mentally committed when he made entry into that house. There was no hesitation whatsoever and barely any thoughts. The kitchen was, okay, I'm inside.
If you put me in the mind of the killer, and then I get some spirit energy, and then I'm like, did you leave town? Did you leave town? Okay, so now I'm going up the side of the house on the right. So if I was standing there in the lower part facing the house and I have strong chills on my legs, I go up the right, I go up the hill, and I go in the back way like that, and I got big chills on my legs. I'm just going to go with what I feel like and maybe check with the facts after, because I feel like I'm with the killer, and I'm going up the side of the house on the right and in the back sliding door. And so he has this moment where he knows he's in, and he's taking his time. He seems to know when he goes. He knows. I feel like he's been there before.
It was pure animalistic rage.
I think he has fantasies of the one that's not the thinner one, but the one with the rounder face a little bit. He has fantasies about her. Like, the fantasies are of a real grotesque nature. I'll repeat them here, but then just cut them out of the video. Feels like he wants to, and where she sees that it's him, and that's going to be the last thing she sees while she's alive. Like, that's the feeling he has in his head. It's pretty bad. I got chills on my legs.
And then glory at his accomplishment. Bryan felt no remorse.
And he has no remorse or anything like that. No remorse.
And he was not tired. I've heard a lot of people speculate that the other two are alive because he was tired because it's so much work. He was ecstatic. He was on an ecstatic rush high. I could see the energy explosion out the whole top of the house.
He thinks for a second of looking for more, but he stops for a second and there's no noise. There's nobody getting up. So he just waits for a few minutes. And he's like really on a high now. He's sticky with the blood, but for him it feels good.
He was so pleased with himself. And as you see, he ran all over the place for a day because he was on such an adrenaline rush. The only reason those girls are alive is because this allotment of time is because Bryan Kohberger ran out of his allotted time. Again, I was shown it was because of his OCD, and that was the amount of time he allotted to himself. Now, did he pick up that issue about Ted Bundy and the time there, or study other serial killers and want to beat the timing of one of his heroes, Ted Bundy? It could be possible. I wasn't shown that part in my reading, but it does make sense. And maybe he used some of it driving around in circles around the house. So either way, it all boils down to those girls are alive because this OCD serial killer wannabe, and possibly is, ran out of time. Literally. That's why they're alive. As if the target was only one person. Yet outside the house, before I attached to Bryan's brain and went in, I keep receiving the thoughts, I'm waiting for Maddie, I'm waiting for Maddie, I'm waiting for Maddie. But then when I'm feeling the rage, it's more directed towards who I described as the girl with the rounder face, or the girl that was a little heavier. That's who was being followed up the street by Bryan. That's who he had more rage towards. So the true target was to assuage or feed his hatred and anger at girls he could not have and would never have, and who he felt rejected by, and he felt like they were flaunting it and he couldn't have them, and he was so angry he wanted to kill them. Literally. This hatred is a lifetime of perceived rejection and feeling bullied, left out, disconnected, emotionless, out of touch, and something he will never have, and he just wanted to kill it. And that very likely could have stemmed from his experiences as a young man being bullied by the pretty girls. You know, unfortunately, but that is true. So the victims who paid the price had absolutely no wrongdoing that led to their own murders. In fact, the four of them, young, hardworking, pretty, fun-loving students, all trying to make something of themselves and ready to go into their future. And it was snuffed out and taken away by someone who was jealous because he could not have them. This November 22nd uploaded reading, I was shown that Bryan Kohberger had a physical defect in his brain, and they were showing me maybe someday they'll be able to figure that out. So I don't know that it's something they could even figure out at this time.
His parents know there's something off about him.
And that actually was already confirmed by social media posts from Bryan when he was a teenager. On December 28, 2022, I put up information that I had been given psychically that this killer was at his family home and that his own mother was in extreme danger of being killed if she were to confront him about any suspicions as to his involvement in these crimes. 36 hours later, Bryan Kohberger was arrested in the early morning hours of December 30th, 2022.
Thank you for coming today. Last night, in conjunction with the Pennsylvania State Police, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, detectives arrested 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, on a warrant for murders of Ethan, Xana, Madison, and Kaylee. I want to personally thank these agencies for their assistance in this case.